Hey everybody, welcome to video 31. Today we're going to talk about neurons and neuroglia. So neurons and neuroglia we'll learn are very important parts of the nervous system. They are basically the cells that we see in the nervous system. Now there are many different types and many shapes of neurons and many different types of neuroglia. So we're going to try to cover a few of those here, but just know that, again, the nervous system is an extremely complicated system, and there are certainly some differences when you look at cells, and especially if you look at the development of these cells. So we're going to try to cover some of the neurons and neuroglia that we see, and then we'll kind of discuss what a general neuron is going to look like. So there are two cells that nervous tissue can be made of: your glial cells, otherwise known as neuroglia, and neurons. Glial cells' job is to provide framework to support neurons. So they aren't actually doing any of the communication that we see and that we think of when we think of the nervous system. Their job is to help the neurons, which are doing the communication. So you can see some of the glial cells here. We'll go more into them, but they come in all sorts of different shapes and different sizes. They will originate in different locations, but in each of these, they are supporting neurons. So your general neuron is going to have dendrites, a cell body, otherwise known as soma, an axon, myelin sheaths, and axon terminals. The dendrite's job is to receive information. So this can be from some sort of stimulus, depending on in certain types of neurons, or it can receive information from another neuron that it's then going to carry that communication through the rest of the neuron. It receives information at synapses if it's attached to another neuron, or sometimes the dendritic ends have their own ability to receive information if they are a sensory neuron. The cell body is going to contain the nucleus and other organelles. It's a very large portion of the nucleus. It's where all the organelles are going to be located. As we get into the axon, you're not going to see any organelles, and the cytoplasm is going to change to something known as the axoplasm, which really is just more so focused on solutes and ions that are going to be important for the next video when we talk about action potentials. So the axon is going to carry the message down the length of a neuron. So your dendrites are going to receive them. They're kind of little spindly branches. That information is then going to pass through the cell body down the axon, which is going to be the majority of the length of the neuron. Myelin sheaths wrapped around the axon make messages travel faster. We'll see that when we take a look at action potentials. And then it's going to reach the axon terminals, which is the delivery end of a neuron. So that neuron is going to be delivering information through those axon terminals to whatever comes next. Sometimes it might be another neuron. Sometimes it might be some sort of effector. Effector just means something that's going to do something that the neuron has basically been told that it needs to do. So you might remember from our neuromuscular junction, there was an axon terminal located in the neuromuscular junction. It was the neuron side of our neuromuscular junction, and it was delivering information to that muscle fiber, telling it that it needed to contract by releasing acetylcholine out of the vesicles located inside of it, so that acetylcholine could travel across the synaptic cleft. There we see a synapse where two things are meeting, to the acetylcholine receptors located on that sarcolemma. Here we can see a diagram of a generic neuron. These dendrites here just branched out the receiving ends. They'll be attached to all sorts of different things depending on what type of neuron you're dealing with. Then you have the cell body where most of your organelles are going to be located. And then that message will travel through the axon. These axons can be very long depending on the neuron, all the way until they reach the delivery end, that is the axon terminals. And so when we talk about the anatomy of neurons, that also leads us to talking about gray versus white matter. Because certain regions of the nervous system are going to be composed of mostly dendrites and cell bodies. They are what's called gray matter. They aren't necessarily gray, but they are certainly a darker tissue compared to white matter. A collection of cell bodies in the central nervous system is called a nucleus. I know there are other words that you'll see, nuclei, or the word nucleus used in, we talked about it in biology when we went over cells. But if you have a collection of these cell bodies, they're going to be called a nucleus. If you have that same collection of cell bodies in an area in the peripheral nervous system, that is going to be known as a ganglion. Now, the nucleus and ganglion descriptors are not going to be important for this class, but if you take any sort of anatomy class beyond what you have in high school, you're going to spend a lot of time talking about nuclei and ganglia. And then regions of the nervous system that are primarily those axons are going to be called white matter. And the reason they are called white matter is that those areas look very, very white, especially compared to gray matter, because of the myelin sheaths that are wrapped around those axons. And so myelin sheaths are primarily made of lipids, primarily made of fats, which are white in color anyways, and so that leads to the white color seen in white matter. If you have those axons, and usually they are in some sort of group together with nearby neurons, in the central nervous system, it's going to be called a tract. And then in the peripheral nervous system, it's going to be called a nerve. So to get technical here, a nerve is going to be only in your peripheral nervous system. You don't have any nerves in your cerebrum. And then a collection of axons in your central nervous system, in your spinal cord, especially in your spinal cord where you have ascending and descending tracts, are going to be those collections of axons traveling wherever they need to go. We see here one note, a neuron, or a collection of axons for neurons can be part of both a tract and a nerve. So you do have some neurons where their axon length actually will run from your peripheral nervous system to the spinal cord, which is part of the central nervous system. Even though they are the same neuron, at that junction where they change either from central to peripheral or peripheral to nervous system, the name of that neuron changes, or the name of that collection changes from tract to nerve or nerve to tract, just depending on what direction you are looking. Here we can see in your cerebrum the gray matter and white matter that you have here. The white, that very, very light color, especially compared to the gray matter. You can see that gray matter isn't necessarily a gray color, but when it certainly stands out from the white matter you have here. We can also classify neurons by their shape. So you have your unipolar neurons, which actually are not truly found in humans. Humans have some pseudo-unipolar neurons, which look like they're unipolar, but actually are not. They just have very, very thin ends. But they have an axon that has a dendritic end and an axonal end. Basically, the axon is going to come out from the soma, and it's going to split and serve both roles as an axon and a dendrite. Usually these pseudo-unipolar neurons are only, or I shouldn't say usually, they are only found in ganglia, which remember are part of your peripheral nervous system. Bipolar neurons do exist in humans, though they are very rare. They only exist in your retina, in your eyes, and in your olfactory epithelia in your nose. They're going to have one axon and one dendrite. Multipolar neurons are going to have one axon and multiple dendrites, which is basically every neuron in the human body. When we think types of neurons in the humans, we're really going to be focusing on these multipolar neurons, which is why pretty much any image you see of a neuron has this general shape, where you have multiple dendrites here, and then an axon leading until it branches into some sort of axon terminals. But you can see here this unipolar neuron has one branch coming off of it, and then that branch splits and serves as both the axonal end and the dendritic end. Bipolar neuron is going to have two processes coming off of it. One is the axonal end, one is the dendritic end, and then we can see that multipolar neuron there. Diving into your glial cells, there are 6 types of neuroglia, 4 of which you can find in the central nervous system, 2 in the peripheral. The first one is your astrocytes. Now these are called astrocytes because you think astro, star. They literally are star-shaped cells that are going to support neurons of the central nervous system. Usually they're maintaining a lot of things that are existing in the fluid around the central nervous system. Things like ion concentrations, signal molecules, and they also play an important role in the blood-brain barrier, which is the barrier that protects your brain from getting any sort of extra blood or unwanted tissue into it, because obviously your brain is very important. Oligodendrocytes are going to provide myelin for the axons. Remember, those axons are coated in myelin. Microglia are very, very small. Their job is kind of act like a white blood cell to find disease or damaged cells and basically get rid of them. Ependymal cells are going to filter blood and make cerebrospinal fluid, which is found in the CNS. So again, you don't want any sort of extra or unwanted fluids around your brain or around your spinal cord. So your ependymal cells are going to filter your blood and only allow things through that your central nervous system needs. Your satellite cells are found in the peripheral nervous system. They're going to serve basically the same function as the astrocytes, except since they're part of your peripheral nervous system, they do not contribute to the blood-brain barrier. And then Schwann cells are going to serve the same function as your oligodendrocytes, where they insulate axons in the peripheral nervous system with myelin. Here you can see some pictures of those astrocytes, those star-shaped, providing support and taking care of the extracellular matrix around neurons. Microglial cells, which are looking for damaged or diseased cells. Oligodendrocytes supplying myelin to the axons of these yellow neurons here. And ependymal cells, which are filtering blood, taking care of that cerebrospinal fluid. Over on the peripheral side, you can see these Schwann cells coating these axons in myelin, even though it's coated red for some reason. And satellite cells here basically serving the same function as astrocytes, taking care of the extracellular matrix and making sure that the correct concentration gradients are available for it. So that is video 31. We take a look at all these cells that you can find in your neurons and neuroglia. Again, there are many more types, and there are very confusing other functions that you can see in these neurons, and especially the neuroglia. So we're just kind of brushing the surface here. So if you have any questions, please let me know.